Now it's going to be the Donald versus Kamala.
And it's like once again, we're talking all my black women out there. Once
Right.
again, black women are being called on.
Save the day. I'm more than qualified for a lot of stuff, and so is Kamala Harris. And I am just ready for this moment. And I know Omari knows all of us women of color, we're all up in arms. Our brothers better fall in line.
But I think a lot of American people, and even people who might not necessarily be Harris fans, and especially women who are tired of people saying that they don't belong and they don't deserve, that they're not qualified.
Well, welcome again to Unfiltered. I'm Enrique Cerna, along with former Seattle City Council member Debora Juarez, and joining us from Chicago, what Times called the Windy City, is my main man and Converge Media founder, Omari Salisbury. Omari, actually, you've been traveling around a lot. You were in Houston, now you're in Chicago. So fill us in. What's going on? What's with kids, right?
Yeah, so every summer, as these kids grow up, man, we kind of rotate and move all across the country. And so my youngest daughter lives in Houston, and every summer I take her to Seattle, then Chicago, where we're at right now, where my son Omari lives, and then Atlanta, where her older sister Acacia lives. And so we keep it all in the mix. And it was interesting. I was in Houston a few weeks ago because of the hurricane. I went down there to help out, and I'm like, okay, well, life will get back to normal. And then when we were leaving Houston this time is when all the computers went down.
Oh,
And so, I know that Council President Juarez isn't sympathetic to my Mariners, but she might even be sympathetic to this, is that we planned, because my daughter's a big Astros fan. And so we planned to go from Houston there to T-Mobile Park and catch the last two of the three Astros versus Mariners games. But we missed those games, but it's all good. You know what I'm saying? The best thing is we're together, and so we've been having a great time. So here in Chicago, nice, warm, and, I'm happy.
that's good.
Yeah.
Now you're with your kids and your family. I got to go to one of the Astro games because it was Cougar night at Coug night at the Mariners, and unfortunately they lost, but they did manage to get one game out of in that final
I'm sure all
series.
the other kind of Cougars showed up too.
Oh yeah, they
Oh,
were.
wow. I knew that was
Yeah.
because Enrique's single now. So,
Oh yeah.
they're not looking
Oh,
at
that's why it was Cougar night, huh? Okay.
No, no,
Okay,
WSU
Enrique,
Cougs.
you're single now. You have to put it out there. Come on now. It's in the dating site, buddy.
All right. Well, we will go into my love
He's gonna
life,
edit
which is
that out. He's gonna edit that out. I know
which
he
is
is.
it's not existent right now.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to take care of that.
All right,
Cougar night.
folks. All right, folks, let's talk about what's been happening. Now it's going to be the Donald versus Kamala, he can't even figure out how to pronounce her name. What do you guys think?
It's an interesting matchup here between Trump and Harris. And it's like once again, we're talking all my black women out there. Once again, black women are being called on.
Save the day.
It was 4 years ago where Claiborne put out the call to all the blacks, and especially black women. We got to get Biden in there, and black women, you know what I'm saying, well, rallied around Biden and everything else. And now the pressure is really on, because now it's black women and they need to support, which is like, it's all good, but it's weird how these dynamics kind of work out. I think the only thing that the really issue that I have is that, like, I've been wondering how credible people are. I mean, none of these guys in DC are credible to me. Let's be honest with you. Council President Juarez has actually had the opportunity to meet some people personally, so she might have a different take. But from my 30,000 foot view, so to speak, man, I mean, none of these guys are credible. I think the thing that really gets me is that all these guys have been talking about, like, man, Biden, he's sharp as a tack, he's this and that. And I just feel like a lot of people in power in the Democrat Party, you know what I'm saying, they just hopped on a bandwagon and misled the American people and misled the voters and everything else. And nobody was willing. And I'm sure, like, President Biden isn't, like, hey, well, you guys say I should sit down. I should sit down. I'm sure there were some people who was like, man, this probably isn't the best idea. And when he ran, he was supposed to be the bridge to something new and younger. That was kind of what he ran on. He was running. He only ran on one thing: stopping Trump. And he did that. And I think the Democratic Party had a great opportunity and enough time to set up a transition, maybe for like the next 10, 20 years of like, okay, this is a route to go. But instead, Biden decided to run for re-election. I think a lot of people around him probably knew that, like, man, he's not up for this. And that doesn't mean that people shouldn't, who care and love and support him, should feel any indifferently, man. That's one thing we can't escape is time and age and everything else. And so now here it is. And I will say this, and I'll give it over to the council president over here, is that, now the ugliness comes out.
Yeah.
And now the ugliness that was always there, but now it's just extreme. And, like, man, you know me, man. I'm not too political. I'm not on nobody's bandwagon, everything else. I'm not a bandwagoner for Harris. We'll see what happens. I'm not against her either. I just like to see things play out. But I will say this is that when people, this thing of her not being qualified, and the funny thing about this is you get representatives from states that have 400,000 people in them, 500,000 people. Their legislative district got 80,000 people who voted for him. And you got somebody, whether you like Harris or not, who's statewide. California is bigger than most countries on earth. You know what I'm saying? Who statewide was elected twice, who's met every criteria, and they're going after her being Black and going after her being a woman. And I'm going to tell you this, that I really think that, of course, that base, that's where they live in and that's what they eat and breathe. But I think a lot of American people, and even people who might not necessarily be Harris fans, and especially women who are tired of people saying that they don't belong and they don't deserve, that they're not qualified. I think that the Republicans are going to make a big mistake if they keep trying to throw out this whole DEI thing. So, anyways,
well, they started with that right away. DEI higher. So, all right, Ms. Juarez.
I think Omari's right. And you just framed it for me, Omari. Welcome to our world of color, women who have to check every box, go to college, go to law school, have a resume that's sterling, and then always have a mediocre white boy fail up and have the whole world support them. Because in their world, that gentleman looks like success. And people like Kamala or me or other women who worked hard, we don't look like success or intelligence. That's not their yardstick. So I'm going to put that aside for a moment. But getting back to what you originally said, Enrique, about passing the torch, and you're right, Omari, he did say he was the president that was going to be the transition. I just want to say one note, because I know we had a few texts, but was telling people I'm riding with Biden until he says no. And the reason I said that was a couple of people called me, as I said, I'm going to give him, as Omari always says, space for grace. I'm going to respect him as an elder, as wisdom, as a public servant for over 50 years. And in my heart of hearts, I know this sounds corny, but I also wrote in my journal, I believed he was going to do the right thing. And I quit watching the news on June 26th. I did not turn on the news till my birthday, which was July 22nd, which was Monday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Healthiest thing I ever did, because I didn't listen to the bullshit. I didn't listen to the clamoring knuckleheads up in the trees, just chatter, 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 the Beltway. I just wanted to clear my head and mind and just focus. And I was not surprised that he passed the torch. I was not surprised that he did what he did. And I know what I'm going to say next. Someone's going to say, oh, that's so corny, but I don't really care. I have never in my life seen the greatest act of love from a politician than I just saw in Joe Biden. As a former politician, some people fall in love with the power. They love it that they feel important. They get intoxicated by it. They'll never leave office once they get a little taste of it, kind of like an actor. They want to feel relevant. That defines them. I've always never drank the Kool-Aid on that. I'd always keep an arm's length from all of that the best I could. But, he handed over the power of the presidency to Kamala Harris because she deserved it. She fought for it. She was qualified. She ran for president before. As you all know, I was an early endorser, and I met her more than once, introduced her to the Honoring Women's Luncheon with Indigenous women leaders. And so I just felt, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I felt like, as you know how I felt about Shirley Chisholm. She's my hero. I have her pictures everywhere. I do feel like that 12-year-old girl in the Democratic convention where I was watching TV and, poor as hell and thinking, oh, there's our next president. That was how naive I was, because I didn't understand racism and sexism and misogyny and how the world really works and all the other stuff. I was this girl watching TV thinking, oh my God, that lady's going to be our president. She looks like my third grade teacher, Shirley Chisholm. And then the world set in. And then I learned, okay, here are the rules. And this is how the board looks. And I don't get all the pieces that some other people get, but I'm going to do this. And you know what? Kamala for me is like emotional. It isn't even, of course she's qualified. I mean, Omari's right. California, it has the ninth, either the seventh or the ninth economic base in the world. You don't go from being a local prosecutor to the AG to a senator to VP as DEI. You don't, assholes. I don't say DEI. I said did earn it, and did earn it 100 fucking times over. What do you want from us, people? What do you want? I will never look like a white male. I will never look like Joe Biden. I will never look like JD Vance. But on paper, I'm more than qualified for a lot of stuff. And so is Kamala Harris. And I am just ready for this moment. And I know Omari knows all of us women of color, we're all up in arms. Our brothers better fall in line. Not in love, in line. Okay. We don't want your money, not your job. We don't want your car. We want your vote. We want you to support us. All this, we're going to be an ally for our sisters. Get in line. Okay, Omari, get in line.
There's quite a few people now who will vote or who are engaged to vote now who weren't even thinking about voting because of the fact this woman and because of the fact that it's a black woman or who's running in other communities as well. You know what I'm saying? She's also Asian. That other communities might be involved. So I mean, there's people who 2 weeks ago were like, man, this is all crap. And my biggest thing is, so where we're at Converge is like we're not trying to convince. I mean, we're a media. We never endorse people. We never, it's just kind of where we're at. We just kind of give information out there. But what we're pushing for is we don't want to get bogged down on so much of an argument on the top level because usually it's difficult. If people are going to vote, they're going to vote for that. And, it's difficult to change people's minds in that sense. But we're telling people is there's so many other things that are on the ballot. There's a governor who's on the ballot.
Right.
There's a superintendent of public instruction who's on the ballot. There's a senator who's on the ballot. If you live in the city of Seattle, there's a special election for position 9 that's on the ballot. There's all these initiatives. So, I mean, I'm hoping that this activation now around the presidential election will also, we just keep reminding people that, yes, there is this presidential vote and it might come down to every single vote. So that matters. But it's like you have a whole other reason to be voting. Like, even if this was Biden, Trump, and you're like, man, 2 old white guys, whatever, I'm not going to. No, you cannot sit it out. This is just as serious here in the state of Washington. You have, and varying views, whether it's Reichert or Simi Bird in Ferguson, and let's see how that plays out. You know what I'm saying? In our senatorial seat, the candidates are real varied. The superintendent of public instruction about how they see education in our state in the future. And of course, you know what I'm saying, here in the city of Seattle and other cities, but in the city of Seattle, that council seat, and that's a citywide, that's an at-wide council seat in a special election. And so just the act of voting is something we're really trying to get people active about. And I think a lot of people on the Converge platform clearly lean a certain direction. But we want people to activate around voting, and Kamala jumping into the race has activated people who told me 2 weeks ago they weren't voting.
Yeah.
I
think been a big key here. It's brought a whole different energy and because before that, I mean, I've heard it from a number of people just saying that, well, they didn't look forward to the candidates at the top, which then affects everything else down the line. So,
down
right. And you bring up a really good point, Omari, is that there are other issues here, a gubernatorial race in this state, from congressional races, the city races, all of these things. So it's really critical. I want to ask one question here before we come back to the presidential race thing. I have an 18-year-old nephew, bright kid, just graduated from high school, did running start, got his AA, he's going to be going to school at Whitworth in Spokane. Love the kid. I said to him, hey, hey, you looking forward to voting in November? First time around, he says, well, I'm not going to vote. And of course, me, I was like, what? You're not going to vote? And basically, he said, I don't know enough about who who's running and all those things, and I'm not quite sure what everything else was going on there. But let me ask you guys, what do you say to an 18-year-old who says, I'm not going to vote?
Well, my child has said that when they were younger, and I said, "Oh no, if you don't vote, I'm filling out your ballot. So we're going to vote. That we don't play in this house. You're going to vote because you matter." So you watch what your mother has went through. You've watched what our people and other people went through, how change is made. So all your little spouting slogans and your little T-shirts. Okay, great. This is the time now to shut up or put up. And both my girls still vote. Now I got my nephew. I said, if you don't get down here and vote, we're doing the ballot together. And no, I tell them, I do the anti-talk. No, you're going to vote. And this is why. Because let me tell you something, the world is going to be difficult for people that look a certain way. And if that's all the power we have, and we have more power, by the way, but my point is, when you get someone to physically engage and then all of a sudden it changes their mind about how they think about themselves, that they are part of, now I'm sounding like Kamala, didn't file a coconut tree. It's all relative. You're part of something so big. And as I also I used to tell my girls, in 10 years, your generation is going to be running this world. You need to be part of this. And without giving a big civics lesson, I just said, no, you're going to vote. You want your car keys? You got to vote.
No, I mean, first and foremost, for my kids, I mean, they're civically engaged. But if they weren't, I'd be like, man, if you don't get your ass up here and vote, because it's my kid.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I do is really like, man, I mean, this was ingrained in me my whole life. My mama told me about her grandmother, Dosha, who, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that was a big deal down there in Sanford, Florida. And she talked about her whole life that her grandmother paid taxes and everything else. And they could never get no services. They could never get this and that. And my mama, even right now, she says she's not voting for herself. She's voting for Dosha. She's voting for people who were denied the right to vote, who were bullied at the polls, who were met there with the Ku Klux
Who were
Klan,
killed.
who were met
Killed.
there. Yeah, who you go to vote, and then you see the guy who owns your factory sitting over there. And so you see all the signs, nigga, you go vote, you ain't gonna have no job. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and when we bring our historical perspective to our young people as to why, like, yeah, you sitting there comfortable on Instagram and the internet and all this and that, but bruh, it's a lot of people that got you here. And so, growing up with those reminders of taxation without representation, of being bullied at the poll, of all these different things. I mean, man, I don't need that much motivation. And those are the stories that I continue generationally to my kids. So there's a historical perspective. And then it's like, man, this is your civic duty. I think as a country, we fail a lot of people, in civics. It's a lot of people who don't even pass Washington State history these days, which is crazy. But man, this is your civic duty. It's part of your rights and responsibilities. This is the one thing is like, man, that we're all shareholders or stakeholders in. And this is what equalizes you. Like one thing is powerful, my time overseas, especially like in Tanzania and Kenya during election season, is crazy because the poorest farmer way up in the village, he's equal with the biggest billionaire. That's how they look at it. The vote is so powerful that once every 4 or 5 years, the poorest citizen is on the same level as the richest businessman in that country. And politicians over there in that part of the world, they got to go way up deep to the village. They got to go all over because they know how that these people are going to vote. They've been waiting to vote in the village and they're going to vote. And you're not writing off nobody's vote anywhere in the country. And it's so emboldening to see that at any level of society, people are like, this is my one equalizer right here. Today, I'm an equal citizen with anybody else in my country because of that vote.
As you know, Native Americans didn't have the right to vote in their own country till 1924. And, with Omari's historical perspective, when I know that adults recently until Biden weren't going to vote.
Right. Yeah.
These are Democrats that were like, hey, I can't. And then I go back to, like with Hillary, when you were going on and on about her emails. Oh, God forbid you vote for Hillary. You hate Bill Clinton. What about her emails? And look at what we got. You happy now? I mean, I just, the lunacy of when people do that stuff. Again, I have to say it again. Democrats need to fall in line, not in love, because the Republicans do. They fall in line.
Yeah.
They get it, and they understand the bigger picture. It's power, as Mari said. It is power to take that pin and fill in that little circle and say, I believe, I belong, and I count.
Is the message about preserving our democracy strong enough to get people to get involved and to vote?
We talked about the whole project 2025, and it's
Yeah.
900 pages long, and it's just a fucking nightmare. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It is a nightmare, but I'm not surprised by it. I've only read some of the analysis and listened to podcasts about it. Molly Jong Fast has a really good one out. But anyway, I think now, once we get over the little kind of honeymoon with VP Harris now running to be the nominee, I think that has to be the message, because we've talked about this before on the show. People are now saying the quiet part out loud about racism and nationalism and Christianity and misogyny and all of that. But I think they've just been louder. I don't think there's more of them. But we still have to get that message out. And I truly do believe, and I don't think it was hyperbole to say that democracy, the very transition of peaceful power, which is embedded in our country, that's what makes us, and other countries have it too, by the way, but that is what that was our crowning glory. Look at us, we can transfer power. Look what Al Gore did on the count. He just stepped back and said, okay, I'm not going to let the Supreme Court, it's going to divide the country. We don't have those kind of politics. Our Gen Z doesn't see those kind of politics. They don't have that historical perspective, nor should they, of course. But we do as elders, to educate them and remind them, do you want to go back to those days? And again, I am a Democrat. I dyed in the wool pretty much. But I went to college in law school during the Bush years and the Reagan years. And they were awful. You couldn't get, without going into that, the story of, like, I had to walk to school 20 miles in the snow. I don't want to do that on the show, but my daughters tease me about that. But yeah, the alarm, it hasn't just to be alarm though. And that's where the shift came with Biden handing the torch to VP Harris, is that it wasn't like just an alarm and we're all afraid. All of a sudden fear and, people not saying, I'm not going to vote, turned into almost like Obama kind of hopefulness again. Like, wow, the elders are listening to us. They want someone younger. You delivered someone younger, somebody that has a 30-year perspective and understands Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, and boomers. And if that's the message, you got to get that feeling in people. That's the thing. They got to feel it. Is simplistic as that sounds. I've learned, even when I was campaigning, even if people didn't like me and they had my opponent's sign on their yard, I still would knock on the door and still introduce myself, because I wanted them to see me as the humanity. Just I'm a person. I know you saw a snippet of this or that on Fox about me, but here I am. I don't know why. I think I learned that. I heard that story from Obama when he was saying, even with his campaign folks out there knocking doors, him telling his campaign folks, and when people turn him away, the conversation is always worth having. Yeah. Even if we disagree, because we will find middle ground. And if I win, I will be your president, or if I win, I will be your council member. And I want you to know who I am. That's important to me. And so now we have this feeling of, and dare I say, this energized hope. We have a whole 2 new generations that are like perking up, like, yeah, all right, okay. My question though is this, and for both of you, is, are we going to put too much pressure on VP Harris when she becomes POTUS, like people did to Obama? Are we going to emphasize the Black president? You know what I'm saying?
Only thing I got to say, so here's the thing is with Obama, and he's come afterwards and be like, this is why I couldn't, or do more or something. But you got to think like this, man. For a lot of people, man, there's some people, like my grandma, rest in peace, that him being elected and his inauguration was just, it didn't matter to her. If what bill, whatever, anything. She was in her 90s, you know what I'm saying? And it was, it was just transformational. And that was enough. There's a lot of Black people like that. And he really did make you believe that hope and change, it was real. And for the people who, man, that's what they needed, then that's what they got. And he definitely delivered that. And even right now, when I look back at that, I look more at his legacy like that. They're like, man, something impossible is possible. But you got a lot of Black people who's like, so for example, DACA, which is great, but DACA is like, it's come under attack and everything else. But that's something that people can say, that community can say that Obama did for Hispanic community. If I'm not getting it all right, please excuse me. But like for that community,
For the
and
majority, yes.
it's
Yes.
tangible. It's there. There's nothing with Black people that you could be like, yo, man, this was the thing. He made it happen. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why a lot of people with Obama are like, man, it's cool, bro. But you know what I'm saying? And he was always scolding Black people. Something go wrong. He's the one, and I mean, sometimes people need, but in public, he's on the media. He's this and that. I like Obama though. Obama show up right now. We're gonna kick it. I'm seeing, what I'm saying? We're gonna drink something. So I'm not tripping like that, but I'm not like I got a problem with Obama, but I'm just saying that it's like, man, Black people do have an expectation because it's gonna be Black labor if she gets into office. Look at all these Black people organizing. Black people in our state, we live in a bubble. If no Black person in Washington state voted, Obama still carried like almost all 39 counties in our state. And if no Black people voted, he still would have won. So it's like, okay, maybe you don't hear our voice, but in other parts of America, it's like, man, people came out and made a difference just like they did with Biden. And these guys get into office and they forget everything about real Black agenda change. And then we be 4 years later, like, so I think people should hold their feet to the fire on something Black. If you want Black folks to get out here and really rally,
Okay, well, let me set the table though for what's going to happen with VP Harris. She's going to inherit a world that Obama did not inherit. She's going to inherit a strong economy, 16 million new jobs. Yes, I wrote it down. Wages are up. Inflation is coming down. Racial wealth gap is at its lowest in 20 years. We have historic infrastructure investments, lower prescription drug costs. First Black woman to the United States Supreme Court, Ketanji Jackson, love her. Violent crime rate is saying it's at a 50-year low. Record health insurance coverage, significant climate change laws, and I could go on and on. I wanted to see how the table is set for success for VP Harris. So when Obama got elected, what he inherited.
A recession.
The recession, too big to fail. Everyone was mad. So now this is how the world and the creator works. It's all set out. She has a wonderful table set for her for success and can leverage all this.
One of the things I think the big challenge she's going to face is to not let Republicans define her, because they've already started that with the labeling and things. And yeah, but she has to define herself and set that in motion before they do it, because it's already getting ugly, but it'll get ugly.
Yeah, and she is a well experienced politician. As I said, local DA, AG, senator, ran for president. This woman knows how to campaign. And the thing about being a politician and running for campaigns, you expect people to define you. You expect them to do oppositional research. You expect all that. And my motto and my theme with my team was, we got our own race to run. We're going to run on our merits. They can call me, diversity, identity politics, blah, 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 whatever. Wasn't really this, wasn't really that. And I've listened to that. If I had to listen to the people that said I was not successful or smart, I would not.
All three of us here.
Yeah. And so we already know, we already inoculated from that racism and misogyny. We know that. What breaks our hearts is we want our brothers and sisters to have this power too. And that's why we love them and say, you got to vote, and you got to go to school, and you got to go to college, and you got to bring back to your community. The world is bigger than just you and Instagram and, TikTok. So this woman is the most qualified person to run. I know no one else who's running for president, even Obama, that Kamala Harris has on everybody. I cannot think of another politician that has run 4 races, including running for president, as qualified as she is. I cannot think of one. Even Bill Clinton, he was a Rhodes Scholar, he went to Yale, but none of them were trial lawyers.
Yeah.
None of them dealt with crime, not at a local and a state level, as an AG for California, and dealt with the politics. And also, one thing I really admired her, and this is why I was an early supporter when she was running for president, because I already knew who she was and had read about her and admired her, is that, homegirl can take a punch. And that's what you got to do. We are strong women. People just do not. In fact, I love being the underdog. It's like, yeah, all right, okay. But this woman is strong, and intellectually, I cannot wait. I'd never watched the debates because I just can't. I feel like they're just ridiculous sometimes, but it'll be interesting. I want to know your guys' thoughts. How do you think Trump is going to respond and deal with Kamala? He can't call her a bimbo. He can't do all the stuff that he's done to other women.
He may, but yeah.
Well, I know, but we're going to see on the stage,
All right.
woman did murder trials. She's going to, it's just, so how do we want to watch this? We want to watch it like, oh yeah, get in there. I'm more like, intellectually, show this country why you are POTUS. Let him be the buffoon and do the crazy shit he did. And with Hillary walking behind, she ignored him. That's what we do with men. We have to ignore them when they act stupid. But she will run her own game, and we will see her brilliance this time. Like I saw when she was doing the debates when she was running for president. And now she's even more polished. She's been all over the world stage. She's different countries. Now she's going to have to deal with the border issues. Abortion will be a slam dunk, but these are the more difficult, meaty issues that now she's finally getting an opportunity. It's like, I'm going to use Omari's baseball, analogy. She's up to bat.
Yeah.
And she's ready. Right, Omari? Is that how you say it? You're on deck. You're ready.
I think the crime issue is one that she'll have to deal with, though, because of her record in dealing with that. And that's something that they'll probably hit her hard on.
They already are.
Yeah. And I think that the debates could be they're going to be different because of her energy that she brings to the table. But the other thing is that, okay, Trump isn't going to be able to interrupt like he did in the past, because if they've already set the stage of, cutting off microphones, not one of these kind of, they're together walking around. So that would, although I'd love to see that happen and see how she would handle that. I think that to me, one of the biggest things here is it's women turning out to vote and what she will bring to the table there. And I still, even when Biden was still in the race, I still feel that women will have the biggest opportunity to make a difference in this election, just because of what's happened at the Supreme Court level, Roe versus Wade, all of that. So I really think that that's going to be a huge motivator, even more so now.
Let's say the quiet part out loud in this country. Race.
Yes. Yes.
That's what it comes down to. We're not this homogeneous. We don't all look alike. And that was the beauty of our country. And so for me, I don't think it's a race problem. I think it's a racial issue. And when you start talking about race, and you have to talk about history, and you have to talk about pain, and you have to talk about owning up to some shit. And they don't want to do that. So we still have to learn and we're still learning how to have those honest conversations about race and power. And as you know, status quo here in this country is not good enough. You cannot have only rich white people. You can't. But we do. And so now how do we change that? And the wealth gap. Yeah. And as you know, Martin Luther King with Bernard Rustin, the original march, because he's been a hero of mine. I've read all his books, his biography, or his autobiography. It started out as an economic equality march. Mm-hmm. He was the architect of that. And he couldn't march as a Black gay man and be the one out front. Martin Luther King did it, but he was the man behind him and went to India with him to meet Gandhi and learn these principles. So again, for me, the long game is we still hold our culture and a multi-universe culture that we have here. That should be our crowning glory, not a race problem. You see, does that make sense?
It does, but it's just, why can't we do it? Why can't we just reach that where we can actually work together? Right now, I feel like it's a race of versus hope versus hate. That's where I feel like we're at. And that to me is, I think we're going to see a lot of ugliness here. But I'm hopeful that the energy brought by Harris and the change is going to bring out people that were not going to vote and that say, yeah, I'm going to get involved and to make a difference, because I think that that is so important right now. To me, it's about our democracy. It really is. I've been saying this for a long time, and I think that's where Biden was what was all about. He accomplished a lot, and I think it's surprising as to what all he did. Now I think Harris, having been in that second spot, can step up and move things forward. Let's talk about another issue you brought up earlier, Deborah, about the crime rate. While it has dropped, we are in this city and in this county of King, where we're at, still experiencing violence at gun violence, particularly among young people. Seattle Times recently had an article about many more kids are being shot and killed in King County. 17 children under 18 have been killed in homicide so far this year in King County, more than double the number of juvenile homicide victims in all of 2023, county's most deadly year.
When King County Executive Dow Constantine made his state of the county address, if that's what it's called, he said that he was calling upon public health, particularly the Department of Gun Violence, the Regional Office of Gun Violence Reduction, to come together with a plan for 100 days of action. The county have then partnered with the city of Seattle around what we're in right now, which is 100 days of action around gun violence. And there's also engagement of community partners like Urban Family or Community Passageways, and they have their initiative called 100 Days of Peace. Now, the 100 Days of Action is built around policy and funding. What can government be doing as far as legislation and as far as finding dollars, to one, I think everybody agrees that we need intervention in the current crisis, but we need to figure out what's going on upstream and be able to make investments there. The 100 Days of Peace is really about activating in community and addressing community needs, letting community know that people care. So, those can be all kinds of different events. There's different things that are going on. The city and the county is going to make people more aware of those. But so right now we're in the middle of 100 days of action with city and county government and 100 days of peace of what's going on. So, I mean, this is what they're trying to do right now. But like one big thing is that, yeah, these young people out here with these guns, man, they need to be paying a cost. It's not all right. I'll continue to say this. And sometimes they'll butt heads with different community organizations who feel that because of people's life journey that they should not be in locked up. But man, I feel differently. I don't want no killer sitting next to my mama on no bus. I don't want no, like, these kids are getting in and they're getting out, and some of them got ghost guns. A lot of them, they're illegal with this. Well, it's already illegal, but they got switches. They're modified, 30-round magazines, kids 13, 14, 15. They need to put an emphasis on getting these people and these guns off the street and then circle back around. And if they got the resources, let's do them both at the same time. I would be happy to see that. But man, these young people need to sit their ass down. You know what I'm saying? They need to, and even our system is the system, but even the shooter up there in Linwood who killed that young girl who was 13 years old, and he was out on bail. He was home the next day. You know what I'm saying? If there was ever a clear and present danger to a community, this is somebody who shot recklessly in a crowded mall. And the judge was like, yeah, okay, fine, here's your bail. And, they met the bail. It's an affluent neighborhood they're from. They met the bail. This person's back at home. What message does that now send? What message does that send? Like, man, and it's been too long that it's been too long for the people who are not directly impacted, who are not the victims of crime, seem to have the largest voices in a lot of these policies that are here. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you go sit with these people whose kids have been murdered, yeah, and ask them, do you want the person who murdered your kid in jail? They're going to be like, hell yeah. It's only other people who are like, well, let's defer, let's this and that. The system did this, man, put their ass in jail. So
I'm
this
with
community
Omari.
is safe.
This
You
is
need
where
to be
me and Omari
safe.
agree. We've always said this. And the enablers out there, the little crazy, oh, they're marginalized, and the system. You know what? I use it. Me and Enrique were talking. You don't want a 15, 16, 17-year-old out there with a gun shooting his classmates.
Yeah.
Stop enabling people with this permissive attitude that it's okay to be getting an argument in a mall, go home and get a gun and shoot everybody. And then, maybe an ankle bracelet. Stop. I'm with Omari. Sit your ass down. Again, it's the same goofy white people, I'm just going to say it, are out there, with their peace, dignity, whatever the hell they're calling themselves now. No, some people need to be locked up. You do not need a circle to get around and make sure the community. No, people need as Omari said it, I've said it, I've watched it. I certainly watch it on a reservation in Indian country. We don't care if you have a gun and you're shooting people, your ass needs to go to jail.
That's it. I mean,
That's
that's it.
basic. And
Consequences. It's all about
like,
consequences.
Why are we getting experiment? People don't understand. We're getting this is social engineering, experimenting.
yeah, I
But
know.
we're paying the price for that. We're paying
Exactly.
the cost. In what other society can you consciously and willingly go and kill and shoot or try to intend to kill and maim somebody and the consequences be this low? It's not okay for killers to move freely through our neighborhood. It's not okay for our parents and elders to be in line with somebody who might have just killed someone. It's not okay for our kids to be around with killers around them. This is not okay. And we're normalizing a very unnormal lifestyle here in Seattle and across the country. These people, these young people with these guns who are making these decisions to cause harm, there has to be a consequence. There's very little or small or minimal consequences, and they're killing us all. You see what I'm saying? One way or another, people are sitting there dying. The 13-year-old girl who was there in Linwood, minding her own business, Amar Murphy Payne, trying to be a peacemaker. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so it isn't like, oh, these are just gangbangers killing each other, or this was in commission of a crime, or this, man, it's dangerous out here. And people need to stop lying. This is the one thing I'll tell you, is there's too many liars out there. There's too many rosy glasses, or it's too many. The problem in our city is this. It's almost like the Seattle is dying issue, right? You got people who one lens of glass like Seattle, everything is perfect. I don't know why the right is like whatever, right? Shit's not perfect. Then you got the people the far right. Oh, it's all a disaster. It's all burning down. It's 88 square miles, man. This is a big city. And so both of these guys' viewpoints are skewed. They're both skewed and they're crazy, but they have the loudest voices. You see what I'm saying? And no one is just telling the truth. And the truth is it's like, man, it's a very dangerous situation that's happening out there, and it needs to be addressed. And all hands on deck need to be on the same page, because these violence interveners, they're out there risking their life, trying to stop people from retaliating or trying to do all these things. That's a dangerous job they have. You know what I'm saying? At the same side, the court system and everybody else, everybody needs to be on the same page to make our city safe, because it's dangerous in a lot of places right now. And we see this.
Yeah.
Well, Murray, and I'm just going to say this, when I was on council and some other times, even before as a former judge and public defender, that was my fatigue with the far left and some of the people progressive, no consequences, permissive society, template, let's experiment in Seattle and see what happens. Being that voice out there, and a couple of my council members, and then later on with the new council that came in with me, or not with me, but later on as I was already sitting, Omari's right. They've taken some failed social policies, and they failed. And what bothered me, and still to this day breaks my heart, is that in 2020, defund all that crap. None of them will admit to this day and connect the dots that what happened in 2020 and defunding and all that's permissive, all of it, we could have another whole nother show.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to own up and connect the dots and say what we're sitting in now, this pool that we're sitting in now of death and guns and our kids and public safety. Nobody wants to connect the dots that went back to 2020. They don't. And unless we start with a same set of facts, and even if they're scary or we don't, we can't have alternative facts, we're not going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
All the ones that were screaming at us and saying in letters, shut down the youth jail, don't, the industrialized prison complex, don't put kids in prison. You know, that's
But
not how it works at juvie.
I will say this though, is I think that a lot of these messages actually got co-opted and morphed over time, right? Because
Yeah.
see,
Yeah, they
first of
did.
all,
They did.
I was there. The original demands of the protesters, which I delivered because they gave me the demands. They're like, here's our demands. The original demands was not an abolition of the police force, and it was not total defunding the police force. The original demands were to reduce, defund the police. Well, actually, it was refund the community, which actually sounds much better. If they do this again, they should run with that. Refund the community as opposed to defund the police. You know, who doesn't want a refund, right? But the whole point of it was to move services, remove money from the police force by removing services that can be managed by other departments or people out of the police department. By thus doing that, you've reduced the budget of the police department and you've defunded their part of their budget. That was all very, whether people agree with it or not, that was very practical in a sense, although they didn't have percentages, and the council member will tell you that it's like, you know, you need numbers, you need this and that. But that's where that started at. You see what I'm
I
saying?
know.
Where it was as precise as it could be in a moving kind of situation. Like, we want to take these services out of the police budget and we want to put them somewhere else. And thus doing so, we've defunded. Now, then the right and other people, and them not also being clear on
And not just the right, not
totality,
just the
hold on,
right.
in the totality of their objectives, they left a lot of wide open space for people to jump in. And it's like, man, they don't want to police this and that, defund it. It's just like with the youth jail. The idea of it was that the government, King County government, invested enough in youth services, programs, and interventions that we did not need that facility and it could be shut down. That was the idea originally, is that, man, they transition how they're dealing with youth and put resources there in an intervention and a prevention capacity so this massive facility was not required. Clearly, that goal was not met. You know what I'm saying? And it did not happen. But that's why it's important that people do know the genesis of some stuff and
I
how it
agree.
might have morphed over
Yeah.
No, I
time.
agree.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
The
saying?
problem was this, Omari. We didn't do the hard part first.
Yeah, of course.
And it morphed
Because it's
into
the hard
crazy.
part.
The hard part was, can we have a system set up for alternative upstream resources to refund the community before we dismantle this? Because it sounds good as a slogan. I want to run for re-election in higher office. And right now it's in vogue. And that's where I blame the politicians and some of my colleagues. That's all they cared about. That's all they cared about. They didn't want people screaming. They want to show they're around.
I agree with that. Politicians were bandwagoning instead of politicians really being like, you know what, this shit might work. Let's try a hybrid program though. Let's start in one small place. And like, if I ran for office, that's how I'd be. Like, I'm in TV production, and Enrique will tell you, like, let's do a proof of concept first. Let's even do a test record first, right? We always do something first. So if we go on live, then, you know, we can anticipate or failures or anything else. I don't know why, like, all across America, not just in Seattle, people weren't just like, oh man, okay, this sounds kind of groovy. Let's try a trial project right here. And it was,
Omari, because they had nothing to lose. Their neighborhoods and their kids, and they have never dealt with violence the way that we have in our communities and understood it from a DNA level. So here I am. And then, of course, you know, I was called anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, and a bunch of other filthy names, whatever. But I'm like, I come from experience. Why isn't my lived experience important here? Why is some goofy white person from Lowhurst? Why is that, you know, Queen Anne, all their crazy ass ideas that, oh, well, Portland's doing this and Minneapolis is doing this and San Francisco's doing that. Well, now all those people got recalled and didn't get reelected. Their crime rate in Oakland is insane. They're trying to recall their mayor, who was also part of this. Again, you're right. The whole bandwagon thing, I've watched those things before in my life a lot and said, okay, I get it. But this one to me was so dangerous because I could see that if you're going to use Seattle as a petri dish, I know where the shit was going to grow and who's going to get hurt.
Well, the messages here got hijacked, and it wasn't just, I got to say, there wasn't just people in the white community, but because there's definitely people of color that were all part of this as well. But the other part of this, I think, that happened was that then the defund thing started going, and that messaging, and I think the ideas of what was initially planned or proposed were decent ideas, but you still had to have a
Plan.
staffed police force. You still needed to have cops on the
Yeah,
street.
man. But you know what, man? Some of this. So here's what I'm saying too, though, man. Is because every time that the police numbers go down and everything, they're like, yeah, it's the environment of the environment of defunding it, man. Some of that is some bullshit. Let me tell you, man. There was quite a few police officers that detached themselves from the Seattle Police Department after the 2020 when they saw how their fellow officers beat the shit out of people and got joy out of it. I know quite a few. They're in different police agencies right now because they said, I didn't sign up to do this. We got video. People sitting there trying to get water out of a hose and the police beating the shit out of them. And their colleagues are sitting there in shock. So you had people who left because of that. You got people because apparently with all these lawsuits and everything going on within the SPD, it's not really a great place to be working. Because look at all the lawsuits. And then what never gets no airtime is the black officers who go through hell over there. Because you know what? They get all kinds of innuendo, halfway called niggas and apes, and people leaving bananas in their lockers and everything else. Why would you also want to work there? You know what I'm saying? And then you got but then the thing is like everybody wants to roll it in some big defund burrito and be like it's all defund. We need to call it like it is. SPD got problems.
Oh God,
and you know what I'm saying? It is easy for people just to sit here and be like, oh, well, it's all defund. They're just leaving. It's not welcoming this and that. It's been 2 years of Harold over there saying he loves cops. You got Sarah Nilsson tap dancing for the police. You got Saka being like, I love the So now what is this welcoming environment you're not talking about? The city council's rolled out a red carpet there. They're racing to be able to give all kinds of bonuses and everything else. You've got all these programs that are there and incentives and everything else. If police are still not coming to Seattle, man, you guys, they need to stop blaming defund because that ship sailed and the winds blew just like when the winds of defund blew another direction just when the winds of all these white companies who said they love black people and want to support shit. When those winds blew, so did the winds of defund. So if someone is still blaming SPD's issues on defund today, I don't think that's an accurate analysis. And people need to look much deeper in the organization.
And I will tell you something from experience. Defund was part of it, but it isn't all of it. But let me just say this. From my days way back in the time machine in the 80s and being a public defender, I always knew, even before I was a lawyer and a public defender, cops lie and they sick dogs on people and they assault people and they do the most vile things. Every time I had to cross-examine a cop and I knew that son of a bitch was lying, I remember those days, especially at the height of the crack epidemic and the gang wars. I was there. I was right up in there. And so I know that, and I never walked around thinking that all cops don't, whatever. I just didn't. They're human beings. They have a job. And if they fucked up, we need to call them out. And if we have to, they need to get fired. What I was saying is that we've always had those problems. And that just, the defunding just opened it up to now you're going to be held accountable. We're going to change state laws. You're not going to get immunity. All the things that we wanted as public defenders came to fruition. I'm playing the long game, moving forward. My big issue was this, and not all blaming defund, and you got to connect some dots there, is that we had to be honest about public safety and what we need. And you know what? We needed a plan in place. We needed something that was so direct and so profound that we were going to fight for it and make sure it was in place. And I couldn't get that kind of energy. Everybody would rather wear the t-shirt and scream and go out and do all this. And then when all hell broke loose, and we paid millions of dollars out to the families and to the young folks that got shot in CHOP, the young woman that got hit by a car when I-5 shut down and some other things. I just shook my head. But my point is, I have never, ever, as a regular civilian, as an attorney, as a judge, as a lawyer, just immediately assumed when an officer walked and got in the witness box that they were telling the truth. I never wholeheartedly, when I read a police report, that's just their version. As they say, if the hunter always writes the book, then you never hear from the lion.
Yeah, I mean, right? I'll just say this, is that when guys really look at the numbers at defund and what guys are talking about and what actually got defunded, then people will see that it's a myth. So the ideology of defund was real, 100%. Defund the police, they're in the streets, of this and that. But if you look at the budget And you look what happened here. Seattle Police Department was never defunded. There were some things that moved out of the department laterally across the city, right? And they experimented this. Let's move 911 back. Let's do this and that. Let's move the parking meters in and out. Let's move back. But man, it's a myth. And what I'm saying is now the far right has taken that and run with myth. It was never defunded, but it was the PR campaign about it was clearly excellent because people are still running with it. But when you look at the actual dollars that were ever removed from the Seattle Police in actual takeaways, not movements of departments, removal of budget, the Seattle Police Department was never defunded. Until this day, the far right uses that as a rallying call. Well, it was the defunding of the SPD. Where? When? Now, was there the movement? Yes, 100%. But when you go to the actual ledger, it never happened. And so it's a propaganda tool. You see what I'm saying? And it's effective one.
I was right in the mix of that whole thing, watching Chief Best walk away, watching some council members that said, let's fire all the old white cops first. Just crazy stuff. And you're right. They created a monster. It's like, you can't, there's something called the 13th, 14th Amendment. You can't do that.
Yeah, well,
I felt like I was in an insane asylum. Am I the only one here saying
people got them? They got their union. They was all right. I mean, this is what I'm saying.
Got their union.
This is the state, though. This is what people don't understand. This is the people petitioning the state. And the state sometimes forgets that they have the power of the state. The police department is the government. It's the council is the government. All these are the government. These are the people petitioning government, saying this is the change that they want. And people can't be mad because their slogan was overwhelming and compelling. At the end of the day, the state won. Government won. Nothing changed. You see what I'm saying? Nothing got
it's like, okay, let's take the word that no one wants to talk about. They turned the whole attitude and term, which came out in the 40s and 50s, woke, and they made it a slur.
Yeah.
It became a slur.
Just as like they have DEI, but then now they're using it in a different way. All right. So this is why we call this program Unfiltered, because we get unfiltered. All right.
Omari gets unfiltered. Damn.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You've got to get a little going there too. So listen, I want to wrap things up here. On a maybe a lighter note, maybe not so much for Omari. What's with the M's lately, dude? They can't hit.
Oh, Lord. Really? We're going to talk about baseball? We're not going to talk about the WNBA. We're not going to talk about the Storm. Okay, let's go to baseball.
Oh, no, wait a minute. He's wearing an M's hat. Just went to the game. The Mariners.
So I'll be honest with you. And on a serious but light note, I can only wear this hat here in this hotel room because Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Is that while we look at this as a trident and we're just the Mariners here in the streets of Chicago, the GDs, their symbol is a pitchfork, and this is looked upon as a pitchfork down, which is in a disrespectful posture because it's down. And so I can't even, when I come to Chicago, I only wear my S hats. And even in the little restaurants around here by Loyola campus, man, people looking at me funny, and I realize it's a different culture out here.
Do you bring a different hat?
Yeah, I gotta go get a haircut now. It's the only hat I have. I would say that, man, with our M's, right? A lifelong Mariners fan here, man, is that I'm always looking for the playoffs, and I'm always looking for maybe one day a World Series. But man, we just kind of know our M's, and it's a cycle that, what I'm saying, at some point in the season, they're going to pull everybody in and it's going to be amazing. And at some point, unfortunately, we'll get our hearts broke, but I think that really things are really pointing. There was a lot of changes with the Mariners.
Yeah.
Katie Griggs left. There's a lot of people, even the chef, the executive chef left, the president left. There's a lot of people, communications people left. I don't know what's going on in the organization.
Meanwhile, the Storm, the most winning team in this city's history above all male sports, is killing it with Jewel and NECA. So yeah, let's talk about that. But oh no, let's go back to the losing M's. Never went to the big mitt. But hey, 46 years, and let's talk about that. And by the way,
a lot of
Omari, haterism. I'm just saying we got some winning teams here. You don't need to be sad.
I'm not, look, I'm not dissing the Storm. I love the
Listen,
Storm.
so let me just jump in.
No. You're talking about it. You brought it up. Go ahead.
We're talking up because I brought it up.
Let me explain to the council president here. So what Enrique was doing here in this business is like, man, he's going along a sub theme in storytelling in this episode, because in the very beginning we talked about how my travels that I look forward to every year was disrupted because I was going to see the M's and the Astros with my 14-year-old daughter. He pulled that theme back out here in the end.
Well, it was dumb.
As something lighthearted and deleted to something else.
I say
come in as usual.
We're coming back to man talk about a team that's never won nothing. So let me pull the theme back.
Okay.
To, like a winning team.
So now this is called a pivot. So go ahead now.
There you go. There you go. No. It's called a circle. It's called a circle. You start with one message or one subject, and then you kind of go around in the circle to bring it back to an end.
There you go.
So next time, do we get to start with the Storm, and then we pivot, go all the way around the world, and we come back to our most winning team that the city has ever had?
Yes, Madam President, we will
make
do
sure
that.
I understand how the man thing works.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's not even the man thing. Man, stop.
Yeah.
That.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
All right. You two knuckleheads. Yeah, it is.
You get a lot of airtime over here for this to be a man thing.
That's right. There you go. All right, people. Thanks again. You guys take care. Omari, enjoy your time in Chicago. Make it back safely. Get a different hat so you don't get in trouble. And yes, go Storm. Go Storm. All right. We'll talk to you later.